There are different opinions on how the group in charge of changing capital intern policies will get things done. Good evening, I'm Katie Link.
And I'm Jim Reek. Thanks for joining us. The House Minority Whip is calling for more transparency, while others in the group say changes will only make their job changing policy more difficult. KOMU 8's Andrea Gonzalez is here in the studio to explain.
Right now, that group isn't required to hold public forums. Today, the House Minority Whip is calling.
More Americans and Missourians dying behind the wheel. Traffic fatalities have increased across the country by 10% this year. The Missouri State Highway Patrol reports there have been more than 500 deaths from car accidents in 2015. That number is up from 13% last year. MoDOT Highway Safety Director Bill Whitfield says more than half of the deaths occurred when people were not wearing a seatbelt. Whitfield says these numbers are unacceptable and some accidents can be prevented. One Missouri driver says he's noticed a lack of concern from some drivers and isn't surprised by the numbers.
I'm not surprised, really. You see people on their phones all the time, not paying attention to what they're doing when they're driving. And so when you're not paying attention, it's easy to make mistakes.
MoDOT says it has increased sobriety stops and added guardrails, but the responsibility to drive safely is in the hands of the drivers. KOMU has covered a number of fatal car crashes here in mid-Missouri since the beginning of August. We counted a total of 10 fatalities starting August 2nd when a man died in a crash on Route BB in Callaway County. The next day, 4 more people died in Callaway County, this time when 2 cars collided on Highway 54. Then another 4 people died in a 2-car head-on collision in Randolph County on Highway 63. And just 2 days ago, a man in Miller County crashed his car on Route Y.
An arrest warrant is out for an Odessa man who is facing statutory sodomy charges involving a 3-year-old Howard County girl. Police are looking for James Moffitt. They say he's a friend of the girl's family. He was living with the family until last November when the accusation came out. Police say Moffitt moved out as soon as the child told her mom what happened. A federal grand jury indicted 2 Columbia men today on charges of carrying illegal guns. They are 27-year-old Terry Simmons and 23-year-old Darian Carter. Both are charged with being a felon in possession of a firearm. No trial date has been set.
Another officer-involved shooting in St. Louis and more protests in the streets. Authorities say 2 suspects ran from police who were serving a search warrant when one of them pointed a handgun at police officers and the officer opened fire. The officer was uninjured. About 150 protesters gathered at the scene chanting Black Lives Matter. This is just 10 days after the 1-year anniversary of Michael Brown's death. The MU Police Department is welcoming a new 4-legged officer. MUPD adds a bomb-sniffing dog in the department after nearly a year without one. Brass is a 2-year-old German Shepherd from Holland. He just finished his 6-week police training course in Pennsylvania. Brass's handler, Officer Joan Half, completed the course with him. The pair will work as a team at football games and other large events.
When he finds odors and when he's searching, that's the biggest part of the training, is learning how to read the animal.
During the time without an explosive sniffing dog, MUPD responded to a bomb threat at MU Student Center and Memorial Union. Authorities had to wait until the bomb dog from Jefferson City arrived before they could clear the buildings.
Missouri's weather was very rough in May, June, and July. Farmers in 105 Missouri counties are now eligible for low-interest loans to pay for recovery from severe storms and flooding. Governor Nixon made the announcement today. Only 9 Missouri counties are not on that list. A New Jersey man has been convicted in federal court after illegally trafficking Missouri paddlefish. 45-year-old Peter Babinko moved the fish or fish eggs out of Missouri illegally. The caviar produced from those eggs had an estimated value of $30,000 to $50,000. He faces up to 10 years in federal prison and a $500,000 fine.
Columbia's American Legion post made history a few hours ago. KOMU 8's Mark Collins joins us in the studio to tell us what big step the post took tonight.
I did go to the Legion Post's monthly meeting tonight where it swore in its first ever female commander.
A wild week of weather in mid-Missouri. Let's send it over to Mallory to see what we're in store for next.
Well, you can see from our 24-hour temperature change graphic here that at this point...
Mallory, thank you very much. Angry protesters demand answers after last week's explosion in China.
And got milk? For many students, the answer is no. Find out why after the break. Got milk? Maybe not if you're a student at Columbia Public Schools. Director of Nutrition Services for the district, Lena Fulham, says the amount of milk kids drink at school is dropping. Fulham says the district's vendor, Central Dairy, had to take out high fructose corn syrup from its chocolate and strawberry milk because of federal regulations. The vendor had to lower the amount of sugar in the milk as well. Fulham says she found out about the problem by talking with Central Dairy.
I had asked our milk vendor to provide us with a velocity report to tell us where our milk sales or purchases were, and it was significantly low considering the number of meals that we do actually serve in a year's time.
Fulham says the district will continue to serve flavored milk without the high fructose corn syrup.
The prison release of Olympic athlete Oscar Pistorius has been put on hold.
Why the judge decided to block his release, that's next.
At least 16 people have been killed after a suicide bomber set off a truck bomb outside the offices of a Kurdish security agency in Syria. An Islamic militant group has blamed ISIS militants have been fighting Kurds since last year. Kurdish fighters have been making strides predominantly in northern Syria. Thailand police say the bomber involved in Monday's attack in Bangkok had help. Police surveillance video shows two other men. They released a sketch of a man seen placing a backpack under a bench, then leaving minutes before the explosion. The death count stands at 20.
Residents devastated by last week's explosions in China are lashing out at government officials. Hundreds protested outside a hotel today where the mayor of Tianjin appeared at a news conference. It was his first appearance since the disaster. Demonstrators chanted, "Refuse repairs, clear the pollution." Protesters say they have not seen any action to address their complaints. Last week's blasts killed more than 100 people and injured hundreds more. The war in Yemen has left millions of people unsure where their next meal will come from. The executive director of the World Food Program warns of a growing food crisis amid challenges in reaching people and a lack of funding. The war has caused commercial food imports and aid deliveries to be put on hold.
We're very concerned about the bombing in Hodeida. In fact, we have a boat berthed right off the port in Hodeida that we were hoping to unload, that we are unsure when we're going to be able to unload that ship with the commodities that would support the food assistance needs.
The World Food Program reports about 13 million people are facing possible starvation. They say since fighting picked up in March, the humanitarian situation has steadily deteriorated for the country.
South Africa's justice minister has blocked the early release of Olympic athlete Oscar Pistorius from prison due to a legal error. Pistorius was scheduled to be released last Friday, but the judge sent the case to a parole board for further review. Pistorius has served 10 months of a 5-year sentence for shooting and killing his model and law graduate girlfriend. A family friend of the victim called today's news a good move by the government.
We can never bring Reva back. She will never come back. But I always felt that 10 months was not enough time to spend, it's not enough punishment.
When released, Pistorius will serve the remainder of the sentence under house arrest.
Indigenous groups in Bolivia clashed with police today over the recent presidential decree allowing hydrocarbon exploration in native lands and national parks. Confrontations broke out when indigenous protesters refused to unblock a route in town. Tear gas was used to disperse protesters, and authorities reported that 26 people were arrested and 5 officers were injured. Missouri running back Russell Hansbrough is getting a lot of hype heading into football season.
That's coming up next in sports.
That is sports.
Chris, thank you very much. We have major competition when it comes to reporting.
We do, and this reporter we're going to show you after the break, I think he beat us on the cuteness factor. We'll show you in a minute. He may not be a seasoned reporter, but he'd definitely have some loyal viewers. This 7-year-old served as a guest reporter for Australia's Channel 7. He reported on the annual agriculture show in Queensland. As you can see, he looked quite poised. Talked with fairgoers. Oh yeah, there he is doing a stand-up. You gotta love that. And look at those green pants. I mean, come on. That's good stuff.
He dresses the part for
I
sure.
think so. I don't have any green pants.
Coming up on KOMU 8 News at 10, a wildfire in Washington State has claimed the lives of 3 firefighters.
And more unrest in St. Louis after yet another officer-involved shooting. Join us for KOMU 8 News at 10. Mallory?
Thanks, Mallory. What'd the Cards do tonight, Chris?
They won, Jim.
They won, and the Royals?
They are winning, Jim.
They're winning.
Yes.
And what are we doing Friday night?
We are back to Friday Night Fever live in Boonville.
It's going to be a good night.
Be a pretty night, too.
Chris, in about 5 seconds, why don't you say good night, Chris?
Okay. 2, 1.
Yeah.
Good night, Chris.
Have a good night.